Hello students, today's video is on the bones of the carpal region. So I'm going to walk you through how to recognize these 8 bones in this vicinity. I'm going to give you a helpful sentence to help you remember the order of these bones and also just some helpful tips and tricks along the way. So let's get started. We're concentrating on this area in the wrist. These are called the carpal bones, and as I said before, there are 8. Now, memorizing the names of the bones is one thing. Making sure you know where they are in the grouping is a completely separate task. So that's what we're going to concentrate on. And to start, I wanted to give you a helpful sentence along the way. So I've given you a space to write that. The sentence is, straight line to pinky. Here comes the thumb. And so for that sentence, each one of the first letters of all of these 8 words will be the beginning letter of one of the carpal bones. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight each one of these and then tell you which carpal bone they associate with. Okay, so I've color-coded each one of the first letters of the sentence, and I'm going to go ahead and make a list down here. So for the S in straight, that will stand for the bone called the scaphoid. Next we have the L in the word line will stand for the bone called lunate. The first T that we encounter, and you'll notice there's 3, so we have to have a strategy there, is known as the triquetrum, or sometimes called the triquetral bone. And then last in this first section up here, straight line to pinky, the P in pinky stands for the bone pisiform. Okay, so that's going to be one row. There's 4 bones per row. And the second row will start with here. So H in here equals the bone called hamate. Here comes the C equals capitate. And then notice we have 2 more T's. We've already had 1 T, we have 2 more T's. So the first T that we'll encounter in this row is called the trapezoid. And the last T that we'll encounter is called the trapezium. Okay, so each one of these were named for their shape, which is really difficult to kind of distinguish up in here. But if you separate these individually, I suppose I see some of them, maybe not all of them. So again, the S in the sentence straight stands for scaphoid, the L for lunate, the first T for triquetrum, etc. So once you have memorized these bone names, the rest of it all hinges on you being able to use this sentence appropriately and to be able to find this first bone called scaphoid. So you'll notice here in the worksheet I have 3 rules in order for you to follow in order to find this bone called scaphoid, and it won't matter if the hand is positioned this way, or if the fingertips are down on the page, or even sideways on the page. It won't matter. You should always be able to find scaphoid and then get the rest of these 8 bones correct if you follow these rules. So the first rule is that we are going to start on the proximal row. In order to find the scaphoid, you need to find the proximal row of bones. And I wanted to mention, people are going to have some choices to make in order to find the proximal row. So the first thing you got to keep in mind, and we have our compass up here, the fingertips are the most distal part of the arm. So we're not going to go for any of these ones here because those would be distal. So essentially all that would, well, maybe not that last one. I could see where people would maybe say that could be in the proximal row, or maybe even this one. But these 3 for sure those are distal compared to these other bones. So don't draw this line, but we'll narrow down our choices as we do our rules. So these three with the purple line, they're out. Okay? No, 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 those are not scaphoid. The next rule is that you want to start on the thumb side. And you should always be able to find the thumb because of the way it's shaped. So find the thumb side, which we know in our hand will always be lateral because of anatomical position. So again, let's go up to our hand and we'll narrow down anything that's not on the thumb side. That's definitely out, that's out, and that's out. These, I could see where people would be like, maybe it's that one because that's right next to the thumb. Maybe it's that one because that's more proximal. So right now, all these purple ones are not scaphoid. And now we still have to choose between these two here. So the last rule has to differentiate between these two, and it does. And so the last rule is to find the bone that touches the radius. So out of the two that are left, this bone right here is the only bone that fits into all three of those criteria. So we found our scaphoid, and I'm going to go ahead and color that one in yellow, just like my key. Okay, so I've colored in my scaphoid just to review. It is on the proximal row of bones, meaning further away from the fingertips up the limb. Okay, there's nothing more proximal besides the radius and the ulna. The thumb side, it's on the thumb side because here's the thumb, here's the pinky, so we're not going to start over here because this is the thumb side, and this is the only bone that actually touches the radius while following these other two rules. So that must be the scaphoid. From here, we're going to go straight over to the pinky. So if you follow the direction given to you in this sentence, straight line to pinky, you're going to be able to name those first four bones. So straight line, if I move over one bone, I can find my lunate, the one that starts with L. And then move over one more and I can find my triquetrum, the one that starts with T. And then the last little one, that's still triquetrum there, the last little one here is the pisiform bone. So straight line to pinky, and I'm going to go ahead and label those with their actual bone names, but all we did is we literally just labeled in this direction. Notice we went to the pinky in a straight line. Here's the pinky. We're landing on that vicinity when we're saying the word pinky in our sentence. So we sort of have a double check there. So I'm going to add my bone names now. Now, one of the things that comes up when you do this first row is you have a bone that starts with T. And there are 3 bones that start with T. So there's got to be a way to differentiate between this T, and this T. Well, if you look at the word triquetrum, tri means 3, and it also happens to be, it just happens to be, the 3rd bone in the series. So make sure when you label your T that it's the one that starts with tri, if it's the 1, 2, 3rd bone that you encounter. These two are last. They're numbers 7 and 8, so we wouldn't want to put triquetrum over here because those are last in our sentence. But the 3rd word in our helpful sentence is triquetrum. So keep that in mind and we'll come up with another way to get rid of these. I'm going to put a check mark there because we have isolated that away from these in terms of our strategy. We know this one's triquetrum. So on to the second row of bones, here comes the thumb. We want to land on thumb when we're done. So that means that we have to proceed in this direction so that we can land on the word thumb. So we're going to go from pisiform, we're going to go straight up to find our hamate. So hamate bone will be this guy right here. So here, hamate, comes capitate. The is trapezoid. And thumb is trapezium. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my words, and then we'll talk about how to differentiate these last two bones that both start with T. So I've added in my words for the second row, hamate. So here comes the thumb. There's hamate in red. Capitate is in this blue color. The trapezoid is in this dark purple, and the trapezium is in the pink. And I told you we got to figure out how to make sure that we don't mess up trapezoid and trapezium. Well, if you take a look at the words itself, this word for the ends up being trapezoid. So I'm just going to sneak that in here, trapezoid, and this one ends up being trapezium. Now, in my mind, it makes sense to keep the word thumb and trapezium together because to me they sort of rhyme at the end. Thumb, trapezium. You wouldn't want to say straight line to pinky, here comes the thumb, and then put trapezoid at the end because these two words rhyme. So keep your trapezium with your actual thumb. And that should eliminate the issues with the fact that we have 3 T's. So I'm going to go ahead and check both of these off. We've differentiated between the 3 T's of the sentence to keep our bones in order. So now that you have that helpful sentence, the hardest part is going to be remembering these words here. So again, we want to find the scaphoid to start because that's our first word in the sentence. And in order to find that, we're going to stay on the proximal row of bones, over towards the thumb side, and this bone must touch the radius. Don't rely on the shape because some diagrams, some images don't give you this like kidney bean type of shape. So find the position no matter which way the hand is facing, it'll be the same. Okay, so I wanted to take one last look at our bones, and I'm in the Atlas app here, zoomed in on the carpals. So let's take a minute and I'm going to select these bones so you can see them individually. Which one is the scaphoid? You take a minute and try to figure it out. So if you're following the rules will be the proximal row of bones. And now your first question is, which way is proximal? And the answer is that way. So up here is our proximal row. These guys are out. So proximal row of bones, second rule, thumb side. That's the thumb. I don't know if you can tell. That's the thumb. So we'll want to stay over here. And the third rule is that it must touch the radius. So this bone right here is your scaphoid. Straight line, trying to make an L there, to pinky. Notice the position of the triquetrum. See, they say triquetral in the app, versus the pisiform. The pisiform's like stacked on top of the triquetrum. So a lot of diagrams will shove it off to the side so you can see it no matter what. So you can see that little bone no matter what. So that little baby bone there. Straight line to pinky. Where do we go next? Scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, pisiform. Where do we go next? Here comes the thumb. We want to land on the thumb, so we're going to loop around again. Here, hamate. C comes capitate. The thumb. The is trapezoid, and this is the trapezium because it rhymes with thumb. So again, keeping your 3 T's separated, triquetrum, the third bone in the series, scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, pisiform. Hamate, capitate, trapezoid, trapezium. And there you have it, the carpals.